All right, guys. Oh my goodness, it's Sunday night, and that means it's Sunday night service. So Dr. Cheryl Burdette and I are going to have a little toast to Sunday night, and I am so excited tonight, guys, as you all get logged on, get logged in, and all of that. Hit your heart buttons, hit your like buttons, and immediately tell us where you're from. Where are you listening from? And pop your questions up on here. We're having a little bit of internet issues tonight in Atlanta, Georgia, but not bad, not bad. So she goes in and out, but don't think it's your computer. I think it may be internet in Georgia going on. But guys, I am so excited to have Dr. Cheryl Burdette on here tonight. I have known her now. Is she just popped out. Anyway, she'll come back on. I just can you hear me, Dr. Burdette? Okay, you're gone. You're not on, huh? Okay, she's coming back. Okay, here she goes. So anyway, oh really? Okay, I have known her for about 5 years. And Dr. Burdette is one of the smartest women I've ever met in my life. She developed our food sensitivity test and our intestinal barrier test, which I call the leaky gut test. But I'm going to tell you a little bit about Dr. Cheryl Burdette while you guys are getting on and telling us where you're from. She received her doctor of naturopathy or naturopathy or whatever. It's just like me being a midwifery, they all say it, from the Harvard of Naturopath schools. Let me tell you that, from Bastyr University in 2001, which she's clearly not old enough to have done that. She completed her residency though at the Cancer Treatment Centers of America. She's currently in private practice in Atlanta, Georgia at Progressive Medical Center. And I have been there and it is fantastic. It is one of the largest integrative medicine clinics in the Southeast. It is fantastic. She's the director of the naturopathic residency program with a focus in nutritional biochemistry. She serves on the IRB board and reviews studies related to complementary and alternative medicines. She's a smarty pants. She's also one of the authors of the book Laboratory Evaluations in Molecular Medicine, and she's published many journal articles, including Alternative Medicine Review and Clinical Chemistry. She is a wildly sought after speaker worldwide. Dr. Burdette travels the world and speaks, and we were just talking. We've not been on an airplane since March, and it's a she presents at grand rounds and all of the naturopathic medical schools, as well as educational events for medical doctors and DS practitioner school when I was in school to speak. She's been a member of the BOA for an Inc. 500 supplement company, which is Zymogen, by the way. Zymogen products, one of our best sellers in the office. We sell a lot of Zymogen. She serves as a faculty member at the University of Bridgeport. She also teaches at the University of Miami, and this is fascinating, the first medical program to include integrative medicine in the core curriculum. If you have not seen Dr. Burdette speak or seen her video on my YouTube channel where she came into the integrative family medicine and did a talk on thyroid, on autoimmune thyroid and hypothyroid. It was fascinating. You need to watch it on Dani Williamson Wellness on YouTube. It is an unbelievable lunch and learn that she did. Dr. Burdette, thank you for being here and taking time out. I can tell you what, ladies and gentlemen, had COVID not happened, there's no way we would have had her in this country right now.
I would still log in forever.
So glad that you're here. Thank you, thank you, thank you.
Yeah, my pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Guys, as you're on here, tell us where you're from. Write your questions in there, and we are getting ready to get busy talking about food sensitivity testing, the power of food sensitivity testing, who it's for. It's actually for everyone. I spent 24 years seeing doctors for irritable bowel syndrome, lupus, chronic itching, depression, you name it. Well, those four things mainly. 24 years. 24 years. It took 24 years and 10 doctors before a doctor ever looked me in the eye and said, Dani, what are you eating? Do you know your diet controls your symptoms? Do you take digestive enzymes and probiotics? And do you know your food sensitivities? What? Your food sensitivities? I had no idea what he was talking about. That changed my entire world 10 years ago. Food sensitivity testing. That was Dr. Kalb over at Cool Springs Family Medicine. And so I didn't use her test 10 years ago, and now we do. But tell us about the power of food sensitivity, Dr. Burdette.
Well, I think that none of us have achieved our optimal level of wellness until we are on the diet that is individualized for us and the least inflammatory possible. So no matter how good you feel, or even worse, no matter how poorly you feel, you haven't reached your potential until you really thought about, what can I eat that's going to do the least amount of harm to my body? Because of course we have things that can fix the damage, and we have things that can suppress symptoms, but really the best is to never damage the tissue at all. And that means eating things that don't bother the body. And when I was back in school, so naturopathic school, as you can imagine, has a wide array of style of professors. And so we had many of it was in Seattle, Washington. And so we had many of the same medical professors that taught at UW, University of Washington Medical School. People come, same, taught physiology over there, taught physiology at our medical school. But then we had our more elder, senior naturopathic medicine types. And so a couple of my favorite professors, two extremes. One was constantly in the library. I was in the library a lot, and I would always see him there. Back in the day, we had to actually Xerox journal articles. Like, you can't just put them up
Yes,
online.
I remember
Always
that.
there, Xeroxing, research, heavily evidence-based. Some of you might even know his name. His name's Dr. Alan Gaby, and he has one of the best textbooks on. Yeah. And I watched him Xerox all those basically himself. So hugely researched, very evidence, matter of fact. Another favorite professor, much more kind of energy driven, and what's the feeling of that? But what I recognize about both of these professors is they were so different, but both extremely effective with patient care. And I was like, what in the world do their styles have in common? Because on face, not a lot. But when you looked at and listened to how they were practicing medicine, the first thing that they did, from the very evidence-based side to the more energetic side of things, was change the diet. And that was a real lesson to me right at the beginning, that if you don't change what you're eating, you can't expect to have an optimal level of wellness. So now, next question, great, we're on board. We're going to change what we eat. And so I'm going to read this diet book. I'm going to read that diet book. I'm going to read 12 more books. They say 12 different things. They might even say 16 different things, because a few of them say, a couple of things internally. It's very hard to figure out, but there's some good truths out there. And those truths are: eat a lot of vegetables, don't eat too many calories, don't eat too many carbohydrates and sugar, even though it's the holidays. Those things are true and wise. But you can be doing that. And then the next level, which things tend to be the most inflammatory in the body? Probably gluten from wheat, probably dairy. So you're eating your vegetables, you're getting your olive oil, you're doing the right things, and you've even gone that next step and you've pulled out gluten and dairy. And that's a great first step, even without any testing. But many people are still, it's not going to get to their symptoms 100%, and they're still going to feel not quite like themselves, and they're still going to have a level of inflammation. So how do I know what I should eat? And the easiest way is to look at each person's body and say, what is your immune system reacting to? And we can do that in one test. And in fact, we can look at 4 different ways your immune system reacts to a food in one single test. And so what I saw early on is the most successful practitioners, and more important than the practitioners, the patients that were having the best outcomes, were the ones that really thought about what they were eating and made that a part of their day-to-day treatment.
Right.
You're a good example of that. I know when we go out to eat, we're asking for gluten-free, and if we're cheating a little bit, we know we're not doing that for the next few days, and you
That's
know it's something that, I bet you and I feel the same. We don't call it a diet; it's a lifestyle.
You bet it's a lifestyle. It is a lifestyle. And yes, it is a lifestyle that going forward for a while, it's going to have to be something spectacular for me to cheat. I'm not going to cheat, although I think Krispy Kreme donuts are pretty dang spectacular back when I ate them. I'm not going to cheat with the maple glazed Krispy Kreme donut anymore. When we go eat at that Italian restaurant in New York City, yeah, that is worth a bit of a cheat, right? But the goal is, and Karan Krishna spoke about this when he was on, you want to build up resiliency in your body, right? So that when you do have that cheat, and we will, you don't pay for it for 4, 5, 6 days later, right?
And many people, when they first start to think about this, they're struck with how hard it seems, because it's inherently, it almost is always going to be different from what you're doing, because the whole point of it is something in your diet is triggering your immune system. And I like to talk with my hands. So you're eating something, and then the immune system starts to develop these antibodies to it. You start to attack this food. But the problem with that is the way this food looks, it will share protein, or it'll share amino acids that look a lot like the same amino acids in my joint or in my stomach or wherever. So this antibody that thought it was so wonderful to attack foods cross reacts and attacks my own tissue. And so we can begin to feel headaches or gut pain or depression or joint pain, all of these things. Or like you mentioned, it can drive an autoimmune condition, because what is autoimmune? Self.
That's right.
And so you are attacking self. So why does that occur? Because the immune system has somehow become confused and is attacking a food. So what food is it attacking? Probably those that you eat a lot. So almost inherently in this, you're faced with changing the normal stuff. And when we have our normal stuff, our patterns, we know what we're going to grab for in the morning. We know, where we're going to go to get the things we want. And now all of a sudden you've got to change those patterns. And it can be daunting at first, but what happens is it then becomes a lifestyle, and it doesn't take any more time than whatever you used to grab in the future. We learn how to do these things that are quick and easy and make sense for us. And so, and feel good. And that's the part that we should never leave out, is that you're not just doing this for randomly restricting things. You're doing this to feel better. And so when you start to feel better, you're not going to mind that you're not eating those same things anymore. Yeah, sure, might you miss it here and there? Might you be at a party or a gathering and it's a little more difficult? But you're not going to miss waking up sore every day. You're not going to miss having no energy. You're not going to miss your hair falling out or having weird gut pains. These are all going to be things that are worth it. And you learn about food, right? I mean, I bet there's not much that Dani could not make without gluten in it, right? I mean, I'm sure that you could make a muffin, a pancake, a cake, a pie, you name it, right?
Yes, yeah, you bet. And you're not going to miss, as a new patient of mine told me recently, and this is the funniest thing I think I've ever heard, although I know I experienced it firsthand. She said, I said, well, to get rid of the mad shitters. And I went, what? I said, on my computer typing. And she said, have the mad shitters. And I said, I know exactly what you're talking about. Are you talking about your eating? And literally you have to go immediately to the bathroom. She said, yes.
Yeah,
and
not convenient at a holiday party.
We call them the mad shitters in my house. I laughed so hard at her. I said, well, I know exactly what you're talking about. You will never miss not having the mad shitters. Once you figure out what it is your body is.
Yeah. And again,
Yeah.
Another point about doing some of this testing. So the test that you work with and that we've developed at Dunwoody is unique because when we think about, a lot of people go, oh yeah, I've done allergy testing or I've looked at things before. Well, this is like 4 tests in one. So it's an allergy test, it's a food sensitivity test. It tells you about immune tolerance. It tells you about complement, which can make things worse. So we're looking at 4 ways that you can react all in one test. And the whole point of this is, like you said, to build resilience. It is not to take out as many foods as possible from your diet for forever. In fact, what most people notice is that the whole point is to be able to eventually bring things back in without feeling miserable again. Now, there are some exceptions. In general, for many people, there are just some foods that are more inflammatory, like gluten and dairy. But when a test comes back where you are sensitive to blueberries and to turmeric, into spinach, the whole point is to not exclude spinach for the rest of your life. It's to take out the things that are inflammatory, build up the gut, and it takes a minute to retrain the immune system. So it doesn't happen overnight. If you think of any of your friends who've done conventional allergy desensitization, like injections, they're probably doing that for at least 2 years. So in terms of removing foods, we want to think about 9 months, a year. But then at that point, like you said, we're using this to build resilience. And so then bringing back in some of those less inflammatory, healthy foods like spinach, like the turmeric. The point is to be able to pull more things back in the diet without having pain. The point is not to have to exclude many things for the rest of your life. Now there's some ebb and flow to that, and some people are more reactive and have to keep things out longer. But in general, the goal is to make you more competent to the foods that you come in contact with.
That's exactly right. You cut out on us there for a second. So the goal was not to eliminate those foods forever. It's to be able to add them back in and see how you feel. I think that's what you were going to say.
Absolutely. A broad, healthy diet. The point is not to narrow everything, but the point is to have a broad, healthy diet. And probably both you and I would feel like gluten doesn't really serve the healthy part of the diet that much.
No. And I am living proof for this. The first time I did a food sensitivity testing 10 years ago was with a different company. They only looked at IgG testing and they did not use organic antigens at all. I had 29 foods on my food sensitivity: eggs, cashews, gluten, dairy, beans. The reason I'm still saying these, and then plus a bunch of other things. Now, the last one I just had a couple of months ago, I have about 6 foods on it. It's still on there. Eggs are on there, and beans and cashews, bean mix and cashews. So my body 10 years later still does not like those. And I know when I eat them, I hurt. My hands hurt. That's how my inflammation shows up for me in my hands, in my joint pain. But everything else has dialed down. I can live with those 5 things.
And you're clean. You live very clean majority of the time. And so here and there, if something sneaks in, you have that resilience now.
That's correct. And yes, that is correct. And react to that one egg in the food. For sure. Okay, keep talking. I don't want to talk about me. I want you to keep sharing because everybody.
Well, if anybody wonders if this really does something, they just need to check out your energy level. And if that doesn't convince them, then then they should just be able to tell from your energy that making these changes is helpful. So
it does. Here's a question here, though, before you get on, because people ask us all the time. If we have eliminated dairy and meat prior to being tested, can that alter the results? That's a very legitimate question, Iggy.
It is, yes. And so in general, yes, the more you come off of something, you could have a likelihood that it doesn't show up on the test. So there's a couple ways to handle this. If it's something that you're going to continue to keep out anyway, then it doesn't matter as much. But for something, so depending on how reactive you are, we may have people eat little amounts of things the week before the test just to make sure it shows up. If you're super reactive, then my feeling is if you already know you feel super miserable from that, even if it's lower on the test, we should probably still keep it out anyway. So there's no point in making yourself feel worse for the purpose of a test result. But yes, and that's also a good thing too, because it demonstrates that when you take the foods out for a period of time, you can see those reactions go down. So yes, it can be a problem with testing, but it is a solution in terms of healing.
Absolutely. Okay. Oh, one other thing here. Blood test versus DNA test versus skin test. And the skin for food, I don't think is nearly as accurate, is it?
No, and also the skin is only, so on the Dunwoody test, on the Precision Point test, we just changed our name. So on the Precision Point test, we look at 4 different ways that you can react to foods, and what you get on a skin prick is an allergy, and we look at that on the Precision test. But the Precision test also, when you do it which is done in the blood, it is more sensitive and also more specific. You're more likely to pick things up. The other problem with the skin test is you're relying on how somebody looks at it. So they're looking at it and saying, oh, I think you turned really red or a little red, and that's how you get your result. This is an actual measurement of those antibodies that are creating inflammation. So it's a bit more direct. So DNA test, I think the question about DNA might refer to stool testing and not food sensitivity or allergy testing, because there are, to my knowledge, there aren't DNA allergies or sensitivity tests. There are DNA stool tests where you're looking at the DNA of bacteria, and well, I'm your typical girl when it comes to stool testing. If I'm having to choose between culture and DNA these days, I say do both. So the stool test that we're working with does it all. I want it all. And the nice thing about looking at both DNA for gut bugs as well as a culture, it means when you look at the DNA, you're just looking at these little the breakdown parts, and so you can see very specifically, and you can pick up a lot more things. However, the culture part says, okay, now that we found a bad guy, let me culture you, let me grow you. And the nice thing about growing it out is that now when they culture it, that very specific bug, now they put different agents next to it, like botanicals or antibiotics, and they see what kills it. If you are just looking at the DNA and not culturing it, then you didn't grow anything to test it again. So now you're just guessing what's going to work for it the most. So in terms of stool, I like both.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so the dietary antigen test and the intestinal barrier test are what we are buy one, get one special right now, which is fantastic. I mean, I got this email like the day after or the day before Thanksgiving or something. I was so excited. Talk about, so you look at 4 different pathways of inflammation: allergies, sensitivities, IgG4, right? And complement, correct?
Yes.
Okay. What people don't know what IgG4 and complement are for sure.
Yeah.
So
and don't feel bad about knowing, because many docs out there don't know and PhDs don't know, so it's okay. But what you do need to know is that there are just 4 independent ways the body could react to foods, and it can create more inflammation and create more symptoms. But for your patients, Dani, it's good to know a little bit about why these are so important, and part of that is because of which ones damage the thyroid the most. If the immune system gets confused and reacts to foods, which of those 4 have the most to do with the thyroid? And it turns out that IgG4 and complement damage your thyroid even more than the specific antibodies that we make against thyroid, that we make against. So your patients probably all know that you measure them for thyroglobulin antibodies and TPO antibodies, and those are specific thyroid antibodies. But yet
Yes.
they don't even hurt this tissue as much as IgG4 or complement does. So if you're eating a food that causes those, you really want to get rid of those in an autoimmune thyroiditis.
Wow. I just learned something new. I didn't know that.
Yeah, we're starting to figure out more and more of this, but those are the guys that are really damaging to this tissue. So I was shocked too when I read that they're more damaging than even the antibodies made to the anti-thyroglobulin antibody. That kind of blew my mind.
So for sure, when a patient who we know for a fact has Hashimoto's thyroiditis or any sort of autoimmune thyroid disorder, when they get their food sensitivity results back, they definitely need to remove the IG. So explain what IgG4 is for them in
Unfortunately, for autoimmune thyroid people, so normally IgG4 is a good guy,
Yes, I
and
know.
we like it. I know, it's unfair. So normally you'd say, oh, good, I have IgG4 because it blocks allergies. So IgE is this allergic antibody. It's the one that so here's my antibody like I had, and when the food binds to this IgE, it causes boom the cell to burst open, and so that could be a mast cell or an eosinophil, and then it releases all this histamine and all this inflammation, and that creates a reaction. So my IgE antibody is sitting around, it's waiting for this food to come bind, and that will set off the allergic reaction. But if I'm lucky enough to have an IgG4 antibody, it will bind, and now it blocks that food from ever getting there, so that of inflammation doesn't occur. And so when people go and do desensitization injections, the whole reason their doc is working with them with that is because it increases this IgG4 to shut that IgE receptor down, usually. But if you're autoimmune thyroiditis, these little IgG4 guys like to drift into your thyroid tissue and start to damage it. And so for that condition, they're no bueno.
Really? I just learned something huge tonight. I did not know that because I knew IgG4 was a good thing for most people. So I've got to go back on all of my Hashimoto's thyroiditis patients and really revisit their food sensitivities.
Especially the ones that aren't responding or their antibodies aren't coming down like you'd expect. But at least they have another tool, something else to try.
See, I tell people to take out everything anyway. So I was just erring on the side of caution always, just get it out. Okay, so we know about IgG4 increasing thyroid damage, even more than thyroglobulin and thyroid peroxidase antibodies with autoimmune thyroid patients. What about complement? What is complement? Because people get confused with that. And I tell them, because here's one thing it says on there. To remove it anyway. Right. And so Atlanta's having problems.
It is. We're super glitchy. I don't know what the deal is. But yeah, that complement, even though it sounds like something you're not familiar with, you probably actually read a little bit more about it recently than you realize, because complement triggers cytokines. And what we have heard recently because of COVID is that it's not even the virus that's the part that's so damaging to us. It's these cytokines that result because of the virus. And complement is a protein that signals your body to start making even more of these cytokines. So it's hugely inflammatory. We normally make it in response to a virus to kill it. You want all that inflammation for a while, but if it goes on too much, it can damage the tissue. That's what happens in COVID. In complement, in chronic conditions like autoimmune thyroiditis, if it goes on too long, it can start to damage the tissue like the thyroid. It's just not going to be as boom quick as something acute like a COVID. So, but yes, complement also damages that thyroid tissue and can be such a problem.
Okay. I didn't know that. So I always have them cut it out because it makes your reaction to the food something like 1,000 to 10,000
Yeah,
times more
exactly.
severe. Is that correct?
Yes, and that's what makes this test more sensitive than some of the other sensitivity tests out there. Is instead of just looking at that IgG,
Works.
we look at that complement that amplifies it like 1,000-fold.
Yes, yes. Did you say you cut out? Did you say that's what makes this test a little bit more expensive than some? Yes, but so yes, you're looking at 4 pathways. So the
Sensitive,
first
yeah, sorry.
was an IgG test, and I tell patients all the time they'll come in with their food sensitivity, and it's an IgG, and it may be the company I used in the past or some other. And I say, you know what? This test started me on my path to healing. And there's nothing wrong with it. It is an amazing test. The regular old test, whatever anybody's using, anything that's going to make you think about food, make you think about your reactions, make you think, oh my gosh, I ate. Food sensitivities are delayed. They're 3 hours to 3 days later. I tell people usually 3 to 72 hours. So a lot of people don't realize if you have a migraine headache tonight at 6:32. It may be something you ate at 3:30 this afternoon, or it could be something you ate, 2 days ago, 3 days ago. So there's nothing wrong with those other tests. They definitely make you think about, oh wow. But this test takes it to the whole nother level. I'm just telling you, people, it does. And I think it's more comprehensive. I know for a fact it is. You all did a comprehensive test that nobody else offers out there.
I mean, it's so not wrong that we do it too. It's just that it's one part of the 4 parts. So it's like saying, so it's like somebody goes and looks at cholesterol, and somebody else goes and looks at cholesterol, HDL, LDL, and triglycerides. Well, the cholesterol's not wrong. It's just not the only part. So
that's a good way to think about it. I'm going to use that in the office. That's really good. Man,
except we could argue about cholesterol, but
no, we're not getting into that argument tonight there. Okay, so the food sensitivity, our patients know because we've used it for years, your test and all, but we don't always get the intestinal barrier test in, right? This is the opportunity now nationwide, not just for my patients, you all. You can have this test done, and we're going to talk about that at the end here, but we've got an opportunity to have this 2-for-1 situation right now where we're combining the inflammation from the food sensitivities and the food allergies with an intestinal barrier test that looks at histamine, zonulin, diamine oxidase, lipopolysaccharides. Explain what that is, that intestinal barrier test.
Yeah. So we have the food test. What foods are your body reacting to? And then the second part is how damaged is the gut? Because part of what causes these reactions to the food is we should have this barrier in place between the foods we eat and our immune system reacting to it. And it gets broken down, leaky, permeable. That's when the food leaks in, and that's when you start to make the antibodies. So how worn down is my gut? And that's what those markers on that test tell you. Zonulin tells tight junctions to open, and it can do that in response to gluten and other food sensitivity. So if zonulin's high, boom, we know your gut's open, we know you're leaking. But the gut can also just get worn down, and atrophy. And so it's not, the zonulin isn't telling it, boom, the garage door to open. It's just someone took a sledgehammer and eventually beat through the garage door. And so that is the measurement of diamine oxidase. The reason for that is you make diamine oxidase in this lining. So if you wear it down enough, you're eventually going to have low levels of diamine oxidase. And so that tells you your gut is worn down, it's atrophied. But the second thing about that one is that enzyme, diamine oxidase, breaks down histamine. So if you don't have that enzyme, not only are you going to be more reactive to things in the environment or foods that you eat that cause histamine, but you're going to start noticing things like my mouth itches when I eat an avocado, Or I drink a glass of white wine and I don't have a problem with that, but I drink a glass of red wine and that gives me a huge headache. Why? Because the red wine has more histamine than the white wine. And so it's not that
Yes,
you're allergic to the wine, it's that you can't handle the histamine. So that marker's pretty interesting because it tells us both things. It tells us your gut lining's worn down and you are not going to handle histamine. And so
that's right.
those people will have done tons of diet changes and food sensitivity testing and all of that, and they never get where they should be. And they're going, what's wrong? And it's because it's not just an allergy, it's that they can't handle histamine. So this can be a real eye opener. And I know that you have there at your practice some tools for that. What's your name of your diamine oxidase? The enzyme that degrades histamine. Do you have the Histio?
Oh, yes. Yeah. We don't have his DAO in the office. We have ANI, which is actually, N-acetylcysteine, quercetin. Well, we don't have
Yeah.
histamine.
Yeah, so you have quercetin and things that will calm down histamine that way.
You bet.
You know, I'll tell you, probably the reason that you don't have the hist DAO, it was a little bit pricier, but they have just figured out a cheaper way of getting that. So you might find that you can use it a little more easily. That price came down about 30%. So
That's the reason I don't have it, because it was so
yeah.
expensive. And I knew that ANI, which is actually histes, from orthomolecular, it works really great for histamine, but I always wanted that Zymogen one, but okay, that's good to know. Message me on that. People don't understand histamine a lot,
Yeah.
and this right here is a big deal for histamine. Alcohol in general is a big deal for histamine. And, I itched for years and saw 2 dermatologists mentioned to me, Dani, are you drinking? Dani, are you eating foods that are high in histamine? Do you eat a lot of leftovers? Do you, are you drinking kombucha every day? What is give them a little pearl about histamine. If maybe you can't have the test, maybe you can't afford the test. What's a little pearl that you would tell a patient to test it?
Well, the layman's histamine test is can you have white wine but you can't do red wine? And if that is speaking to you right now, or if you like, I know things make me feel worse but I can't put my finger on it, go look up a list of high histamine foods. So avocado, which is so healthy and good for us and great fats, does have some histamine. So a lot of people will notice that their mouth burns when they eat an avocado. You're not allergic or sensitive. You just don't have the histamine. You just don't have the diamine oxidase that you need to break that down. So go pull up a list of high histamine foods. There are things like tomatoes or even strawberries, avocado. And if those are some things that bother you, you might not be allergic. You might just not have the enzymes that you need to break that histamine down. But that can be, when somebody figures that out, that can be such a game changer for them. And the thing is, it doesn't mean a supplement for life. It can help to start with, but all these things that you do with your patients to build the gut lining, as that lining builds back up, you'll make that enzyme on your own again. So this phenomenon of, oh my gosh, I used to be so reactive to pollens and grass and whatnot, but ever since you did that elimination diet with me, my seasonal allergies aren't as bad. That is a real thing, because when you take the foods out, the gut lining builds up. Well, one of the things you build in the gut lining is the enzyme that breaks down histamine, so it makes you less reactive to everything: mold, foods, pollen, dust. So the gut is a big deal.
Yes, it is a big deal. I have patients tell me that all the time. We live in Middle Tennessee and we have a tremendous amount of allergies here. And they all tell me, Dani, my allergies are much better this year. What is going on? Well, you're beginning to heal the gut. You've removed the foods. Actually, you want to know, the leader pretty much on histamine is Dr. Becky Campbell. Do you know her book, The Antihistamine?
Yeah.
I was looking for it back here and I don't have it here. I have it. It's somewhere. If I can find it, I'll show it. But she wrote a book that is very easy to read, very simplified, very animated book with big graphs and charts of histamine food, non-histamine food, very simple to read. It's a paperback book. Becky Campbell. It is a game changer for patients.
Yeah, great resource. Good idea.
Yeah.
Worth a read.
Yeah,
Can
yes,
really
it
make
is.
a difference.
Okay, so histamine and zonulin, but and diamine oxidase, but what about lipopolysaccharides? As you know, the plant paradox, Dr. Stephen Grundy, if you've read that book, he calls LPS little pieces of shit. Did you know that? And I listened to the book. I didn't read the book. I listened to it. And whoever read the book was very dry, just like this, little pieces of shit. I mean, it was like, what? And I mean, I had to go back and look in the book and to see, okay, explain LPS to patients because that's a bit, or to this tribe here.
Yeah. So LPS they're called lipopolysaccharides, and they come from bacteria. And so another name they have are bacterial endotoxins. So they're toxins that come from bacteria. So bacteria shed little part of their wall, and that can get absorbed into our body. But the other thing it can do is those tight junctions that hold the gut cells together, it can damage them. So that's why it's on there. When you have a lot of it, it's another way that we can become more permeable. And when we're permeable, things leak in, ignite the immune system again. So that's the first thing. But then the second thing, and so this is why this is really important for autoimmunity too, is we know damaging the gut breaks down your barrier. Now the immune system's flooded and it reacts to so many things. But in addition to that, if LPS is the culprit, not only does it break down your wall so the immune system is exposed more, so the immune system reacts more, the second thing it does is LPS binds to this immune cell called a Treg cell, and that's short for regulator. And so what's happened in autoimmunity? Regulation is not going on anymore, or the immune system is too high. So these Treg cells calm the immune system back down. And so this same LPS that damaged your wall now binds to those Treg cells and decreases their activity. So the cell that puts the immune system back in line, back in balance, is now warped and messed up by this LPS. And so it shows up in the autoimmune literature all over the place. Like, for example, if I took a needle and biopsied the tissue in somebody with rheumatoid arthritis, I find more LPS in their joints than someone who doesn't have rheumatoid arthritis. When you look at the scleroderma literature, when you look at the lupus literature, you'll see this tendency to have more LPS and a decrease of these Treg cells. So I bet with your autoimmune patients that you're talking to them about vitamin D and how balance the immune system. Well, what's one of the things it's doing. It's increasing those Treg cells that help to put the immune system back in balance. And this is an interesting point as we are in this whole COVID world. We've seen the research about vitamin D. We know that Trump was put on vitamin D when he went to Walter Reed. So we know that it modulates the immune system. It's good to have been, Fauci's on it too. It's good enough for Fauci. It's good enough for our president. So, that we're starting to see more integration at a higher level of systems of medicine. But the other thing that the vitamin D does is it trains the immune system to act appropriately. So there's data with vaccines that says you will have less side effects and you will have more effectiveness from that vaccine if you have a good level of vitamin D. So when we're headed into this world of COVID vaccine, and thinking about, I don't know, am I reactive, or I've heard maybe it's not going to work that well. Oh, I've read that in the elderly who need it the most, they're not going to make a response like they should. There's even a discussion of giving an injection of vitamin D as a booster alongside certain vaccines because of the research that shows that it makes them work better. But that's the beauty. Not only does it make you make more of this antibody response that's protective, it remembers to put the immune system back in balance. So if we're worried about autoimmune side effects from a vaccine, what we want is the immune system to do what it's supposed to do, and vitamin D is like the trainer of that. So don't go into these things, don't have your feet on planet Earth right now with vitamin D deficiency. Not good for COVID, and you also won't get your best vaccine response or your safest vaccine response.
Wow. I didn't know that. Well, you know, it's interesting. My mom will be getting the COVID D3 level. Excellent.
Yeah.
Actually, it got up to like 80, and her doctor wanted her to stop her vitamin D. I said, absolutely not. You're not going to stop your vitamin D. And she was like, well, I didn't think so. I didn't stop it, Dani. I mean, this was back prior to her really getting really sick with dementia and then now COVID. But I just learned something about that with the vitamin D and the
Yeah.
vaccine.
Don't pull her off now. I bet
Yeah,
you dimes to maple glazed Krispy Kreme donuts that she's gonna have a better antibody response than her friend next door who doesn't have a vitamin D level of 80.
absolutely. Wow. Yeah, and most of them don't. It's really sad. So, okay, good. So, food sensitivity testing, intestinal barrier testing, the fact that we're getting to do both of them together right now for the price of just the food sensitivity is unbelievable. People, those of you who are patients of mine, if you want to have this done, you need to get it done because the test, it ends December 30th for us. Theirs goes through December 31st, but December 30th for us. What if they don't live around here? Or if they're not my patients? How can patients get this done?
So they can look us up at precisionpointdiagnostics.com, info at precisionpointdiagnostics.com, and then that we can find a practitioner in their area, a doc in their area, and from there they can take the kits to any LabCorp. So there's the big two out there are Quest and LabCorp. They're really easy to find. You could go onto your computer right now, and there's probably a LabCorp within 20 miles of you at least, maybe 5 even, depending on where you live. And any LabCorp will do this blood draw for us. So even if you're far away, there are still ways to get this test done. And like you
Absolutely.
said, the 2-for-1 right now. So if you are not using insurance and the cash price, then it's a great time to do this. And we do that because we think that they're so important to do together. Are you eating foods that are damaging your gut? And then how leaky, how damaged is your gut? Because this tells us, how long we need to treat. Like, how long do you need to be on the glutamines and the probiotics and the things that build the gut lining back up? Now we can really measure and assess that. Historically, when you and I both got into this, we would treat the gut, people would get better. They'd go out and talk to a different practitioner, and that practitioner would say, there's no such thing as leaky gut. So whatever they did, that can't be true. And they're going, well, I feel better. So it seems like it's true. And so we would just have to say, well, it's this theory. Well, now you can measure something in the blood that tells you how leaky your gut is. It is not merely a theory. It's a pretty strong hypothesis at this point, and you can measure it, track it, and see how you're improving.
That's exactly right. But still,
And,
there
and
are a lot
again,
of
back to kind of our cholesterol thing, you wouldn't take something to lower cholesterol unless you were going to measure it and see where you're at. So it's the same kind of thing. You assess how leaky your gut is, and then they talk to you about getting their probiotics and getting their glutamine and getting their quercetin, like you mentioned, and then measure again and see where you're at to know how much and how long you need to take certain things.
she's a pharmacist here in town, and she says, can you give references for vitamin D with vaccines? I want to share this with healthcare practitioners. Can
Yeah,
you go?
so I do a bit of educating. And so check out my site at phahealthacademy.com. It is for clinicians, and this is where I have an online classroom that has CME credits, 18 hours if you need those before the end of the year, but also a lot of other free lectures on there. And I am busy right now working on things that are adjuncts to vaccines that can make them safer, because there's not a one size fits all. We need to think about every person. We need to think about, of course, side effects to vaccines, but we need to think about side effects to COVID as well. And what we know is that they're showing as much as 60% are these long haulers, and 13% have cardiac damage. And a friend of mine who works in a hospital, she says, Cheryl, I get them out of here, but then they're back in 2 months with kidney damage and kidney failure. So COVID has side effects as well. So we need to think about, and that's a conversation you have when you think about what's the best fit for you. But if we're concerned about side effects and that kind of thing, then there are things that we can do about this. This is the beauty of natural medicine, is that it can take even some of the toughest medicines and make them palatable and make them work for us. Like chemotherapy is an excellent example of that. It's hard on the body, but sometimes it's what the person needs. And I'll tell you, and I know, Dani, I'm sure you've had this experience too, those of us that work with integrative oncology, when they are on the natural adjunct therapies as well, they're always the ones that their oncologists say, you're doing better with this therapy. I never see someone do so well. Can't believe how few side effects you're having. So we have the opportunity to take something and make it work better and safer. Now, this is also a reason to be thinking about foods that you're sensitive to right now, because if you're eating foods that confuse your immune system, we do not want a confused immune system when we are trying to battle an infection, any infection, but we're, right now thinking about COVID. And we also don't want a confused immune system when we're thinking about a vaccine too. We want an immune system that's trained to do the right thing. We don't want our soldiers running all over the place, not following the play. And if you're eating foods that confuse your little guys, your soldiers in there who are battling, then that's not what we want to see right now. So this is the beauty of our medicine, is that we get to take most therapies that are out there, make them work better, make them safer, and make them short term. So, maybe, we all have patients that are going to need an antidepressant, or maybe even something like a statin drug for a minute. But we are well aware that if we get them off those foods that create inflammation, get them on some support, these are therapies that just don't have to be long-term and for forever.
That's exactly right. Tell me this. Did you say it was P as in Paul, PHA healthacademy.com?
Yes.
For practitioners.
Yes.
Okay. Now that is different than what I'm doing, guys. Isn't it your Dr. Cheryl Burdette, Dr. Burdette's compendium?
So it's in 2 places right now. We started off on, but the compendium has all been moved over there, and you're in both. So that's going to give you my lectures, but there's some free lectures there, and this is going to be a place where where I get to put up all kinds of information that I bump into. I mean, just fun things that you read. Like, did you know there are multiple studies that say N-acetylcysteine decreases nail biting? Like, so fun things like that. And like, it wasn't like one study, and it showed abstinence of nail biting even after you got off the N-acetylcysteine. So I'm always finding interesting research like this. This is where I'm going to keep those tidbits that we can look at and think about and share, so that we can help more people get better.
Oh, wow.
So my vaccine handout will be there, and but just a teaser. Probiotics, just like mama breastfeeding. Why'd she do that? So that you wouldn't have allergies and autoimmune conditions. So the good healthy flora that gets set up from breastfeeding trains the immune system to do the right thing. So there's some good adjunct vaccine data with probiotics, vitamin D, vitamin A. Those are some of the ones that are really shining right now. So there are things that we can do to make safer and better.
You bet. Tell them about your compendium that you have, because guys, I am in the middle of doing this compendium. I don't even know how many hours it is. I'm only on the first. I know I've been around for 11 years now doing this, and this is brilliant what you're doing. Tell people about your compendium. What's the website? If anyone's interested, I actually have a patient who did it, who bought it and is doing it. And she loves it. Her husband's an orthopedic surgeon, and she is She's actually a physical therapist, but she doesn't practice. She loves it. Tell us about it.
Yeah, so this is a crystallization of my decades of teaching, thinking, because when you are learning integrative medicine, the idea is that you are supposed to consider every single system. Like if you're a cardiologist, you are just looking here. You are not thinking about all the rest of it. But as an integrated practitioner, we're trying to think about how every system affects every other system. And then not only that, but now individualize that to every single patient you see. So that's a little bit harder than memorizing statin for cholesterol, because we're trying to figure out, well, why is the cholesterol high in the first place? And that could be thyroid, that could be what you're eating, that could be certain nutrients being deficient, that can be more free radicals. There's a lot of reasons for it. So that's a hard thing to learn. So put a lot of thought into how do we get started? Where do we get our foot in? But I quickly moved to more advanced concepts too. So it's not just for the beginner, but really thinking about how do we learn our puzzle pieces? And now if we have those basic puzzle pieces, we can put them together a whole bunch of different ways for each patient we meet. But there's some fundamentals that we need to get real comfortable playing with and molding for our patients.
Is it Dr. Burdette's compendium.com or dot?
Yeah, so Dr. Burdett's compendium.thinkific.com. And then you can also find it at phahealthacademy.com.
Oh, I didn't realize that. Okay, I didn't realize that. Okay. All right, guys. So boosting our immune system during this season, right? Eliminating your food sensitivities and your food allergies, right? Following your food sensitivity results. I tell patients every single day, don't do this test, even if it's 2 for 1, or if it's the regular price. Comes back and it says you're sensitive to avocados or you're sensitive to eggs, you are going to stop, or you're sensitive to wheat, whatever, you're going to stop having avocado toast and eggs every morning for breakfast and cashews in the afternoon. You're not going to do this for kicks and giggles. You do it because you're going to follow it, right?
Yeah.
That's right. Don't do it for fun. So we eliminate food sensitivities. We know that will help our immune system, especially during this time. We're all talking about immune system stuff right now. What else? D3 for sure.
Yep. Yeah. So if you're eating foods you're sensitive to, then your immune system is busy fighting foods instead of fighting a bug when you come in contact with it. So if you want to suppress your immune system, eat the foods you're sensitive to, eat a bunch of sugar, and your immune system is going to be really weighted down. Yeah. The second thing is absolutely good levels of vitamin D. That's a go-to. Nobody should be walking around right now without good vitamin D. And now we're headed into the winter, and now we're being told, stay away from people. So that means you're inside. So our D levels are going to go down even more. And that's a problem as we face COVID as vitamin, and not just COVID. Vitamin D has good research with flus, colds. You pick a bug, because the immune cells themselves take in vitamin D and turn it to this more active form. We've learned a lot that doesn't just, we used to think that conversion to the more active form of vitamin D just happened in first the liver and then the kidneys. Now we're learning that immune cells do those same things. So very important for a healthy immune system. I like N-acetylcysteine. That blocks the receptor that COVID bumps into, but N-acetylcysteine is a great one right now. It supports your liver. So maybe you're having a little extra wine than you're used to. N-acetylcysteine increases glutathione, the major antioxidant for your lungs, your heart, your kidney. And there's some research that says that whole cytokine storm thing happens because of a glutathione deficiency. Sleep. Right. One of the reasons they're suggesting that it's worse in the elderly than kids is because kids make more melatonin, the hormone that makes us sleep. So when we sleep, we'll make more melatonin. That protects us even from COVID. It's not just a sleep hormone. It has a lot to do with our immune system. And taking a little melatonin right now actually is immune healthy too. So that was another thing that Trump was put on when he was in the hospital, melatonin
Yes.
alongside that vitamin D. And some vitamin C too. That's just a great go-to. We're all very familiar with that. I'm going to add in one more thing. Throw in some green tea. A beautiful study that just said, I know this sounds like a lot, 4 tea bags a day decrease 40% all-cause mortality. So that's a pretty big deal. Now you're going 4 tea bags a day. You are from the South. You know how to make some tea. Throw your 4 tea bags in, make a big picture of it, drink it throughout the day. Maybe you don't love the taste of green tea. I throw in apple tea bags or some lemon or mint and my mint green tea, and I make different flavors every day. I make a big picture. I drink that throughout the day. So, but green tea also blocks COVID from binding to the receptors it needs to get into the body. So sleep, exercise, get your green tea, throw in a little vitamin D, and laugh. And a little bit of wine, not too much.
That's right. We missed you after sleep and exercise. You cut off, so I don't know what you
A little
said.
vitamin D and a little bit of laughter, I think I said.
You bet. Well, I tell patients, eat well, sleep well, move well, poop well, decrease stress, cultivate community. I mean, it's as simple as that. But the 4 tea bag thing, I didn't realize that because I'm not a huge fan of green tea. I've got to find one. I don't like that bitter taste, or there's something weird about green tea, but it is very, very good for you. But melatonin, I get this question all the time, and then we're going to have to get off here, but about melatonin. Oh, I can't take melatonin. It will stop my natural melatonin, my pineal gland from making melatonin. Speak to that real quick.
Yeah, it doesn't do that. It in and of itself is an antioxidant. So it has an antioxidant effect on the brain where you make melatonin. And so what you'll find is you'll make more over time, not less. So it's not habituating and it's good for you. It's an antioxidant. But yeah, throw some peppermint into your green tea, Dani. See if you like it that way. And don't drink it hot. Do it like an iced tea. Like throw in 3 green tea bags and 3 peppermint bags or pick the flavor you like. And then I think that gives you something, different to drink every day and not just water, which is good for you, but we can't
Water's good for you. Yeah. Okay. Lee Russell says, when should you take an acetylcysteine? Is there a key to that?
So it is liver protective. So the holiday time's probably a good idea, but it's also antiviral. So I do 600 milligrams a day right now. And then the third thing is it increases glutathione, which is the major antioxidant throughout the body. And it's often a little less expensive than glutathione. Now, sometimes if you have a pathology or something, you're going to need that extra step, that glutathione, but N-acetylcysteine helps our body to make it. So it's a very effective way to have the body make the major antioxidant that it uses everywhere. So I think daily is protective is even fine. And then up it if you get a cold or flu because it's antiviral, or if you had an extra glass of wine at that holiday party that none of us are having this year, then cysteine. It can even help with a hangover. Not that anybody listening would have ever dealt with that, but it breaks down aldehydes from alcohol.
Okay. Iggy doesn't taste like dirt. Okay, I agree. I mean, it's hard on me, but Dr. Burdette, thank you so much for being on here. You guys now know. She says, Lee Russell says, a capsule with my wine. So should she take it? Okay, there you go. I am so grateful you guys learned about food sensitivity testing, the power of IgE, IgG, IgG4, and complement, and how they all work together, which is so important. And then combined with histamine and zonulin and diamine oxidase and lipopolysaccharides. Look what we covered in 60 minutes, for crying out loud.
We should at least be better at Scrabble now. We learned some big words.
I'm telling you, we had some $10 words for a Gilbertsville, Kentucky girl over here. But guys, listen, if you want to have your food sensitivity done, of course, you can call the office and make your appointment and you can come in. We actually we had a phlebotomist there 6 days a week now. We had the mobile phlebotomist in. So she was there last week, this week, and she'll be there next week. But if you live anywhere else in the United States, you can get in touch with Precision Point Diagnostics. Did you say info@precisionpointdiagnostics.com?
Perfect.
Okay. And then you can get your food sensitivity and intestinal barrier testing done at any LabCorp, and then go from there. But they do make it easy to read. So I'm just a big fan of them, and I wanted to promote them, and I wanted to get Dr. Burdette on here because she's brilliant. As you can tell, she's brilliant. Even with all the buffering going on, we still learned so much. Yes, yes, Lee. Oh, Michelle says, thank you so much. Great info. So glad to hear where. And this is a lifestyle, and this is a marathon. This is not a sprint, right?
Absolutely.
I tell people every day, it took you 40 plus years or 50 years or 70 years, no matter how old they are when they come to me, 60 years to get into this condition. It's going to take you longer than 4 weeks to get out of it, but you're going to feel better in 4 weeks. You're going to say, man, I'm not where I used to be, but I'm not where I need to be. And you just, once you feel better, you start to do better. It's as simple as that. Yeah. Guys, I got a book this week. This book, a patient gave me this book, and I am blown away by this cookbook. In fact, I think it's the best cookbook I've ever received. It tells you on every recipe. This is the defined dish. Her Instagram is fantastic. Alex Snodgrass. I mean, absolutely fantastic. But it tells you it's an incredible book. Order it on Instagram. I don't know her. I mean, order it on Amazon. I don't know her, but it is phenomenal.
I'm going to check it out.
Recipe book or something. I don't think you have to have recipe books personally. I think you can just cook one ingredient food, right?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. So, all right, guys, I appreciate you. Tomorrow is Monday. It is almost Christmas. So keep your act together. We are not going to parties and all that stuff this year. So it should be easier to keep it together. More so, right? Now the alcohol is an issue because we are drinking more alcohol, people are, than normal, but you can keep it together. I promise you, your body's designed to heal itself. Give it what it needs, right? Eat one ingredient food, and like she said, eat well, sleep well, move well, poop well, decrease stress, cultivate community. And January the 3rd is my next Sunday night service, and we will be talking about building your immune system. This will actually be part 3. I did 1 and 2 this year on COVID and all that. And we'll see what we've learned between the last time and January the 3rd. And that's what I'll be talking about then. Then we'll be going forward from there. But, oh yeah, here she goes. New concept. Eat to live, don't live to eat. Amen to that. We will end it on that right there.
Yay. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Dr. Burdette. Appreciate you. Don't go anywhere. We're going to hang up here. All right, guys. Have a fabulous night. I hope you meal prepped today because it's already 7:08 in Nashville. So meal prepped and have your food ready for next week. All right, guys. We'll see you later.